First off, I want to thank our good friend Techno Dude for sending this game in for me to review. The premium sound edition, no less. He didn't have to, but he's just that cool of a guy. Now, let's hope this review does not make him regret giving me this game. So if you're on this channel, chances are you already know what Kamen Rider is, but if you don't, let me give you the briefest of brief rundowns. Kamen Rider is a long-running television series in the tokusatsu genre that started all the way back in 1971. It spawned multiple movies, toys, clothing, food, and of course, today's subject, video games. And one such game is the subject of today's video, Memory of Heroes, released in 2020 by Bandai Namco, what a shock, and developed by Bandai Namco, what a shock. Funny enough, this game was actually relatively hyped up before release. I remember hearing a ton of people talk about it and actually be really interested in what it would bring, because not only would it be an action-adventure game, a genre we really hadn't seen Bandai attempt up to this point, but also being marketed as a pseudo-sequel to O's and Double, almost like an anniversary, which caught pretty much everyone by surprise. It didn't help that the gameplay looked promising. Look, I know that's a weird thing to get hyped about, but Rider games aren't really known for their quality, so looking decent was enough of a reason to get hyped as hell. But enough talk. Was all this hype worth it? Was them getting all of this crazy marketing worth it? Also, as if it wasn't already super obvious, this contains spoilers for pretty much everything that happens in Kamen Rider Double and O's, plus this game, and a little bit of 0-1, but don't worry too much about it. So if the off chance you've never seen those seasons and you're going to, and you want to go in completely fresh, I suggest giving this video a bit of a skip until you're done with those. The story begins in Sector City, with one of our main riders, Aruto, or 0-1 as he's known in this game, checking out something called core energy after seeing an AI robot on the news and wanting to check it out in person. I don't really know how those two things correlate, but whatever, that's the least of our worries. He is then quickly gotten rid of by this mysteriously low-rendered figure. We then pick up with Shotaro Hidari, aka Kamen Rider Double's first half, or Kamen Rider Joker if you're more of a fanboy of that form like I am, investigating an oh Jesus Christ. Yeah, we'll get back to that in the graphics section. Let's try that again. Our story begins in Sector City with this man Shotaro Hidari investigating a strange emails into his detective agency to find a missing Professor Aida. Whilst investigating, he too encounters the mysteriously low quality figure and is knocked out cold, pretty much losing all of his powers. Don't worry, that doesn't matter. He then wakes up in a strange building being greeted by this cute little robot named I, or AI, who seems to know a lot more than she leads on and also seemingly has robot amnesia. What? It's a thing. Along the way, you start to uncover a bigger plot in this strange city with the discovery of Foundation X, a secret organization that was last thought destroyed, and the revival of many old enemies in the form of former Monsters of the Week, along with foes like Nazca and Eternal, and the entirety of the Sonozaki family. But not only are Double's foes seemingly coming back from the grave, so are the Greeds, a band of powerful beings that O's defeated, or so he thought. Thankfully, Double eventually meets up with O's, 0-1, and a few secondary writers such as Axel and Bert to help out with this strange plot that is seemingly going nowhere fast. So, as it turns out, this guy's name is Zeus. He's doing an experiment or something like that to bring Gaia memories, core energy, and Never, which is something from the Double movie, together in order to find the perfect life form / eternal life? Something like that? No, I'm not sure. It kind of gets muddy around the end here. And I can't lie, it doesn't help that they never really explain why most of the baddies still have their memories. Maybe really they don't. Also, most of them are still going for the same goal they did in the show, except they don't. Whatever, let's move on. All this culminates in Zeus creating Muchiri, a neat new greed born out of core energy, which I guess just sort of forgot about Gaia memories and never, so whatever. So bing bang boom, we beat Zeus. I turned out to be the real big bad because shut up, and all this garbage is resolved with 01 looking like he's just ready to throw down with the first person he sees. Seriously, look at him. Someone shat in this man's Cheerios and he is mad about it. The end. Yeah, the story ain't great. The major flaw that the story has above all else is that for 75% of the game, it just feels non-existent. There are many parts where it just feels like they wanted to do more with the story and just don't, and then halfway in, someone came in and it was like, hey, what's going on with the script? And they just scrambled to just do whatever. It doesn't help that the story they did give us is so utterly predictable. You can tell exactly what the twist is and who the twist involves from the moment the character of AI is introduced. It's kind of a joke. What's worse is that at a certain point they kind of just give up the ghost and start saying things like, we have to clear this stage, or we have to turn off this, with no tact, just go do thing. There's quite literally a scene where the big bad of the game just tells you to hurry up and go finish the level. And it comes off as just laughable, because the story gives up on being a story at so many points that it kind of just feels unnecessary to have it. This almost feels like a fighting game story from like the 90s, where it didn't really matter. The story is not a thing, it's just about the fighting. And maybe if you don't care about the story, then whatever, but it just feels hollow. And the thing is, it especially doesn't help when everyone else besides Double just feels like they're here for the ride. Oz feels like he's just here because of the Greeds, who already don't do anything and feel tacked on, and 01 is... why is he here? He does nothing, basically shows up before it's time for the final fight, and does literally nothing of note besides just be there. He's literally just there because he was the new guy on the block and nothing else. And look, if you're gonna do that and make Double the most important guy in this game, why not just make this a Double game? His character is obviously the one who not only gets more screen time, but he has an actual connection to the final boss, the Sonozaki family, Nazca, Eternal, who are two major villains within the Double franchise. And this game feels like it was made from the ground up to be for him, Double exclusive. Hell, all the way down to the fact that they brought back the original band who sang the Double opening 10 years later to make a sequel song to the original. So with all this, why not just make a Double story? Hell, that's how the game sets itself up as soon as he's introduced. He's given so much in this game that really it should have just been about Double. It really should have. And if anything, that probably would have made the story, granted, a lot shorter, but a lot more concise and organized. It would have been a lot better in the end, and the main result wouldn't have rung as hollow. It wouldn't have felt so bad, honestly. And it's honestly quite sad how lackluster and almost secondary the story is to this game, because going into it, as a fan of Double, I was actually really hyped to see what they could do with it. Essentially, a 10 years later special for one of my favorites. But sadly, that just isn't the case. You may be wondering why I'm starting with the music this time around. That's because I got a lot more to say about things later on than the music. But, you know, we still gotta get to it anyways, so here we go. So music-wise, the game is it's alright. But of course, that's mostly for the original pieces they made for the game. I had the premium sound edition thanks to our friend Techno, which gives you the music from all the shows that you know and love. But I still have gripes. 3, in fact. Number 1. Premium sound editions, while they are nice, are such a blatant scam that it hurts. While yeah, it's cool to hear the music during the gameplay, it's not like you can't just replicate that with your phone and YouTube. Number 2. While it is cool to have specific playlists for each writer, it is still a pain in the ass to go through every single form and give it its own list of music. And keep in mind, I mean every single form, with no way of copying, pasting playlists. I know, I get it, that might have been a bit too much to ask, but Jesus Christ, it's annoying. It was to the point where I didn't even bother. And number 3, the most heinous crime of all. They aren't even the full songs. What the fuck? You pay all this money and you don't even get the full songs? Really? Hell, the songs barely play as they are because of how often the music just suddenly stops and switches to another song that somehow fits the mood, which more often than not doesn't fit the mood. It's so off-putting and weird and just wrong. It hits the point that I made earlier where you'd just be better off using your phone to hear these songs in full. And by the way, I'm not just talking about the form themes, like the form themes for Cyclone Joker or Trajado. No, I'm talking about the actual soundtrack that the game, the Premium Sound Edition, is fucking advertising. They're advertising, hear the music from the show. Okay, play more than 30 fucking seconds. Is it seriously too much to ask to put these songs, you don't even have to do WAV, just put MP3 versions of the songs into the game, into this Blu-ray PS4 game that I know can fit them all? And I know someone's gonna come at me saying, well, obviously they were doing it for the Switch. They were doing it so the Switch can... You know what? I am pretty sure that the same console that can have these games on it can somehow find a way to put full songs on it. That is insulting. That is not an excuse. That is just insulting. Like, honest to God, unacceptable. And I know someone's going to come at me. He's like, well, you got the game for free. What are you complaining about? That's the problem. I'm mad about this, and I got it for free. Could you imagine paying $70, $80, $100, $150, which, by the way, is about how much it's going for on Amazon now? Could you imagine paying that much for less than 30 seconds of each song? That, I'm sorry, but that is just unacceptable. Voice acting in the game is none of the original actors from the shows come back besides 01, but that's only because his show was airing at the time. All the replacement actors, while they do a serviceable job at acting, and you might call this a nitpick, but the voices they got to replace some of these guys are terrible. They do not fit. Like, if you're a fan of Ankh or Birth or any of the villains that are not eternal, you are going to be so damn disappointed. Like, you will actually start thinking to yourself, how did they think this was acceptable? And yeah, the graphics, they are pretty bad. And I know that looking at this, it's obvious they're not bad in the sense that they look like this, but for a PS4 game, and not only for a PS4 game, a PS4 game that came out around the same time that the PlayStation 5 was released, I'm sorry, but this is a no-go. These are graphics you would have seen on a PlayStation 3 game, a mid-lifespan PlayStation 3 game, and I'm being extremely generous when I say that. Like, how bad are they, you might be asking? Sure, let's ask that question. How bad are these graphics? Well, take the animations for the Riders, for example, in the cutscenes, or really any character for that matter. All of them at the beginning seem to be using placeholder movements that they had in Unity. They kind of got better about it towards the end of the game, but Jesus Christ, once you notice it, it is impossible to not notice it because they just look lazy and they look As I said, they look like placeholders. They look like things that they just had in Unity, and they're like, well, there we go. We just day's over, problem solved. Not only that, but the textures on these things, they just feel old. Jagged pixely lines, textures that look like they aren't finished. Models of characters seemingly can't sit still for more than a second without shaking all about. Some characters don't fully render, pop out everywhere. Environments that look just too dour with no real life to them. Explosions that, no joke, look like PSP explosions from the fighting game versions of Kamen Rider. I will splice these in. Look at this shit. It's the same thing. And not only that, but then you have constant tiny little glitches here and there that just kind of happen out of nowhere. And of course, bad motion blur that seems to only be there to cover up the bad motion. It's bad, guys. It's really bad. And I'm really surprised that it's so bad and that the animations of these are just so lackluster, because the pre-rendered opening was actually really nice looking. And the animation on some of the attacks and the finishers are honestly really cool. But it suffers for the same problem that the story suffers from. There's a lot of good groundwork, a lot of good foundation to build upon. But just like the story, it felt like after a while the motivation just dipped and they just stopped caring. And it shows. It really shows. So since there is a lot to talk about in the fighting section of this game, I feel it would be better to talk about the other sections of this game that are not fighting. So outside of fighting, this game, the best phrase that I can use to describe it is a hand-holdy wasteland. Now, what does that even mean? Well, let's take, for example, Shotaro's gadgets. During the game, you get your puzzle-solving gadgets, and you'll get 4 gadgets for the riders to use. The Denden Sensor, the Bat Shot, the Spider Shock, and the Frog Pod. 2 of these you never actually use, and 2 of these are so limited in their interaction with the player, you wonder what is even the point. At first, it's cool getting these because you think you may have to solve puzzles or even look for clues. No, the back camera just goes and gets things in these scripted events, and so does the Spider Shock. The Denden Sensor literally just tells you where to point and you find what you need, and the only one that even allows you to sort of look around is the Frog Pod, but even then it tells you exactly where to stand. It's kind of insulting to even add these in the game because they add nothing. The worst offender of this, honest to God, has to be the aforementioned Denden Sensor. Not only does it tell you where to point, removing all sense of exploration and fun in fighting hidden objects, 9 times out of 10, these hidden objects are right in front of you in places you could have easily just gone up and found yourself. But nope, you either use the sensor or that object never existed. That is so archaic in its design, it feels straight out of a PS2 era game. And most times, they're not even worthwhile things to pick up, just some menial power-ups that could have been given to you literally at any other time. Or better yet, to stay on the puzzle solving, take this. This game has a few password puzzles to solve, but here's the problem. They aren't puzzles, because this game not only literally points you in the direction of where the password is, but it won't let you even attempt the puzzle without finding the password. As in, these puzzles are not there to be real puzzles and to be fun. They are there to waste your time. That is lame. What is the point of adding these gadgets and these passwords if we, the player, can't freely use them to find anything or use our brain for more than a second? Why does the game believe that we're so mentally inept that we need pointers to finish a puzzle that is, quite honestly, not very brain scratching? Actually, that's being extremely generous. A 5-year-old could figure this out. And you can't use the excuse of this being a kids game because 1, there are plenty of kids games with actual puzzles that you need to solve, and 2, this game is rated Zero B, aka 12 and up. Are we going to sit here and honestly say that 12-year-olds would be too stupid to figure out a 5-letter password? Come on. And sadly, the hand-holding continues with constant, and I mean constant, tutorials all the way up to the end of the game. You get a tutorial how to punch, you get a tutorial how to kick, you get a tutorial how to jump, you get a tutorial how to wipe your own goddamn ass, you get a tutorial for everything. Like, guys, I think I can figure out what Trajadol does, because even if I skip the tutorial, you put it right there every time I'm in the form. So it's not like I'm gonna forget anytime soon. You might as well just tattoo it on my fucking leg. Then we get to the map itself. The overly big, empty, lifeless, nothing to do in map. Every stage feels the same. Every map feels just as empty as the next. Oh, there are some corridors here and there to explore, but there isn't anything in them. Maybe, just maybe, there's some random collectibles scattered about, but that's it. All the trouble to go into these places or climb up, all worthless. You see how the theme of motivation just dipping keeps coming up? Another fine example is with this. It feels like they wanted a bigger world. It feels like they wanted to add more things to it. It feels like this game should be much more expansive and collectible heavy than it is, but they just never do anything with it. And it's so annoying to the point that I honestly just found myself not even bothering when I saw an open side path, because I knew it just wasn't going to be worth it. It was just to waste my time. But I could forgive all of this, all of it, if at least the combat was good. Well, is it? Let me tell you. So the fighting, for the most part, surprisingly, pretty well done. You have your light attack, you have your heavy attack, you have your special move, your ultimate attack, you get a cool attack when you switch forms, or you can just switch them, normally. There's a lot to take in, especially with every form feeling pretty different, and with every rider feeling pretty diverse in how they use their powers. Honestly, the fighting in this game is structured to the point where it's extremely encouraged to experiment. Find different combos, find different ways to use these rider powers and form switches and special attacks. 1 second you can be using O's and you can be in Trajadol form, and next second you can be using crowd control with La Torata or Shouta, and a big old finishing move with your final form. It's exhilarating because when you get things right and when you're getting in the same speed and this tempo and just the right flow, it's so much fun when it works. Yeah, you knew this was coming. You knew it. So what's wrong here? Well, there's actually a few things. First off, the camera. There are plenty of times where the camera just seemingly does not want to cooperate with you and will either get stuck or just spaz out wildly. This happens when you're not fighting too, but obviously in a fight you want to see what you're freaking punching. And this happens even worse with big boss fights, where the camera literally does not know what to look at, so it's just going all over the place and you're just like, well, I guess this is my life now. Another issue is this thing, the armor gauge. Now granted, armor is nothing new in these kinds of games, and it adds a bit more strategy outside of just punch and win. The problem lies in the fact that the armor is just too much of a sponge for damage. When you break armor, it has a limited window of when you can hit the enemy before it regens. The issue comes when the armor actually regens. The armor doesn't just simply go back up and you can still hit it and, oh wait, you hit the armor halfway down so it doesn't regen fully? No. That would be too simple. What actually happens is, as long as the armor is regenning, that enemy is invincible. And you will be there, you will sit there and wait for this thing to regen, or else you don't have a choice. And this thing only gets worse in boss fights. And trust me when I say, nothing is more soul crushing than taking 3 minutes to destroy the armor gauge of a boss, getting like 2 hits, then he retaliates, you gotta leave, and whoops, there it goes back again. Gotta do it for another 3 minutes. In fact, the final boss of this game only took me this long because of the armor. I had to go in, break the armor, get a few hits, break the armor again, rinse and repeat until eventually I win. And at a certain point, it just becomes a slog and not fun at all. And you just want it to end because you don't feel any sense of accomplishment beating this thing, because what did I really do? I kicked it until it stopped moving. Yeah, you can basically boil it down with any game in this genre with that phrase. Yes, but the problem is that it does not feel fun. It is not fun at all because you're just rinsing and repeating, and eventually the game just decides that you win. And that also brings us to another issue, the hit detection. Many times you will seemingly get hit by an attack that is on the fucking center of the moon and you're on Earth and you still get hit. Or sometimes it's just not telegraphed correctly and you just get hit because you didn't know it was coming. Or simply, you are the game's bitch, it has decided to hit you and you will accept that damage with a smile on your face. The worst offender of this are the big bosses, where they have such a large area to attack with and seemingly impossible to maneuver around, whether it be jumping or dodging, that if the game even thinks you're in the vicinity of an attack, you will be hit. No ifs, no ands, no buts. That goes double for the parry maneuver that you can do in this game. So, quickly to, explain what it is. If you dodge at just the right moments, you can press circle to counterattack with admittedly a pretty cool yet overused animation to recover some health, or in some fights, RP. What's RP? We'll get to that. But the issue is, again, if the game decides you did not dodge at the right time, you will either just get hit anyways, or the parry prompt will just simply not show up. And it sucks even more when you need that dodge and it just decides to take a vacation. But all of this could be forgiven, well, almost, if not for one flaw. One fatal flaw that destroys this game's fighting system, especially on boss fights, which there are many. This small meter known as rider power. What does this meter do? Everything. Want to do a strong attack? Rider power. Want to do a special? Rider power. Want to dodge? Rider power. Want to do a form change? Rider power. Want to do your taxes? Rider power. Everything in this game that isn't running, jumping, light attack, or your finisher uses rider power. And why is that such an issue? Because it runs out too fucking fast. Yes, there are things to help increase the amount of rider power you have, but with certain bosses, such as Zeus or this thing, they have areas of effect attacks that are too big to run away from normally. Take this scenario for example. You're fighting Zeus, kicking his ass, he charges up an attack you know you can't survive, so you decide to dodge, but uh-oh, you only have enough rider power to use the dodge button once, because you're trying to break his armor using heavy attacks, because light attacks don't do diddly dick. So either you have to hope you can jump over the attack, or sorry, you gotta tank that fucker. There are no other options. And best part? Well, yes, you can recover some rider power by just standing still or walking around if for whatever reason the boss decides to do a giant ass area of effect attack and you only have maybe a point of rider power. Well, I hope you don't like running, because if you try running, that thing isn't going to replenish. Yeah, apparently running just doesn't allow your rider power to replenish. Why? I don't fucking know. It just decided not to. And to go back to the point of the parry system, again, if you dodge and it doesn't count as a parry, that is precious rider power you could have used for something else like breaking armor. But you could say it's risk versus reward, but both things are so utterly unreliable that it's more like risk versus a pat on the ass. Is a pat on the ass a reward to you? Well, that's just kinky, but that's besides the point. And the worst part is that you only really notice this during boss fights at first. Then fighting more and more waves of enemies and bigger mob fights, you realize even there it feels like you don't have the right amount of rider power to finish anything as fast as you want to, or hell, even as flashy as you want to, utterly destroying the experimentation that the game was encouraging you to do to begin with. It bogs down and ruins an otherwise really fun feeling combat system that just feels nice to the touch. And the worst thing is, had you taken away the RP bar, or even fixed it to the point where it doesn't feel like such a limitation, I could probably have recommended this game on the combat alone, even with some of its jankiness in play. It's actually really disappointing because, again, up to a point, the fighting was so fun and switching between certain things and getting combos, and it almost felt like a Devil May Cry game. I mean, basically this is just Devil May Cry, but it almost felt as good as Devil May Cry. And it was so fun until the rider power started getting just too much. There's Survive Mode and New Game Plus. You also unlock 2 new forms. Yeah, the game doesn't give you much, honestly. So looking at the entire package, from the combat system having an extreme limiter that just doesn't make it fun, to the jankiness of just the movement, to the archaic design of some of the puzzles just not even letting you attempt them, to almost just feeling like an entire hallway. Hell, I didn't even show you some of just the ridiculous things. Like, look at this. I can't walk past this? This is a 2003 problem, not a 2020 problem. What the fuck? There's so much in this game that feels archaic. It feels old. It feels like a game that I should have been playing on my PlayStation 2. It does not feel like a game that was released last year. And keep in mind, I get it. This game did not have that long of a development cycle because of 01 being in it. But even then, just the most cursory things, the most basic things are not even implemented right. The motion blur is sickening. The cutscenes are just weird. Even some of the sound mixing, the bass sound mixing is terrible. Like, you actually can't hear the character speak. I had to change that in the settings, and that's not something that's fixed by default? Like, what the hell's going on? And the worst part is, I was actually rooting for this game. I was rooting for this game to be good. I was hoping this game was going to rock my socks off, and I was going to eat my words thinking that this game was just going to be another crappy Rider game. But no. Honestly, guys, I had more fun with Yakuza 1's combat system. At least with that, I could almost excuse it because of how old it is and how janky it can be because of its age. This, again, came out last year. There is no excuse for any of this. There is no excuse to do these kinds of things. It is, I'm sorry to say, but it's almost insulting. It's almost insulting to have a game like this released for $60. Hell, the premium sound edition when it first came out was close to $90. And now if you want to get your hands on it, the regular edition is still $70, and the premium sound edition, the last time I saw, was $145, $147, getting close to $150. And for a game this old, and for a game that feels this archaic, that's the word of the day, by the way, kids, it shouldn't be that much. And again, I was rooting for this game to rock me at least a little bit. I was hoping for this game to be great, and it just wasn't. I know that the director of this game was talking about if this game does well enough, there's going to be a sequel. I hope so. I really do. I am rooting for a sequel to this game. Hopefully they hear the backlash for some of the crap that they did with this game and fix it and do something better with it, and, you know, add on to, honest to God, a really fun combat system. Again, yes, it is just Devil May Cry. It is just a ripoff of Devil May Cry. But you know what? Devil May Cry is fun. This could be fun if they just implemented it that way. So that's all I got. I'm really sad that it ended up this way because, for one, this was a donation from a fan who is a really nice person, and I feel really bad for shitting all over this game. And for two, again, I just really wanted a good Rider game. I know it seems kind of weird to feel this disappointed over a Rider game, but I am, because Rider deserves a good game every once in a while. Like, the last game I played that I thought was actually decent was the PSP All Riders game, the side-scrolling one with Forza. Yeah, that one was simple. Yeah, that one was old school, but at least it was fun. You know, like, I want a good Rider game, and sadly, I just can't recommend this one. Even for the small bit of fun that I had with it, I cannot recommend it. And that's really all I've got for you today. I know this was not Yakuza 2, but this game was donated to us, and I wanted to do it before Yakuza 2 because it just felt right. Plus, it kind of goes back to our roots of tokusatsu, which I love that. I'm probably going to do more tokusatsu games in the future. Plus, it is kind of good to break up the Yakuza-ness with small games in between. So, there you go. So yeah, next time we meet, it will be Yakuza 2. So, until we meet again, I'll see y'all later. Bye. Oh, hi. This is the end slate. You know, the thing I made last time that YouTube made me look like a fucking idiot with because I couldn't put the end card wherever I felt like? Yeah, that's what this is. I made the end card to myself because I don't want to trust YouTube again. So, yeah, go click that video. Or go click this one. Go click any of them. They're all fun. They're all great. You know, they're all fantastic. You know what's not fantastic, though? Drugs. Don't do them. That's all I got. I'll see you guys later.